What if I told you that in 2025, being born in America or even becoming a US citizen legally might not be enough to keep your citizenship? That right now, people across the country, some who've lived here for decades, are waking up to find out they're no longer Americans. This isn't fear-mongering. This is real, it's happening, and it could happen to you. In this video, I'm exposing 5 shocking and little-known ways Americans are losing their citizenship and what you need to know before it's too late. The first and most aggressive method is something called denaturalization. This applies to people who became US citizens through the naturalization process, meaning they weren't born here, but went through the legal steps to become citizens. For years, denaturalization was rare, used mostly in extreme cases. But in 2025, the Department of Justice is making it a priority. A memo from June made it clear prosecutors are being told to actively pursue denaturalization cases where there's evidence of fraud, misrepresentation, or serious criminal activity that occurred before citizenship was granted. So what does that mean? If you lied on your naturalization form, even decades ago, if you left something out, even something small, and that information would have changed the outcome of your application, your citizenship can be taken away. Gone. You're no longer an American. And no, there's no statute of limitations in civil denaturalization. That means even if it's been 20 or 30 years since you became a citizen, the government can still come after you. There's a real-life example that made headlines recently. A man named Elliot Duke, born in the UK, became a naturalized US citizen. Years later, it came to light that he had a criminal record related to child pornography from before he applied. He didn't disclose it. That omission was enough for the Department of Justice to move in, and he lost his US citizenship. This isn't a one-off. Dozens of similar cases have surfaced since the DOJ prioritized these investigations. The focus areas include war crimes, human rights abuses, financial fraud, immigration fraud, sexual abuse cases, and more. If any of those were part of someone's history and they weren't disclosed, it could be grounds for stripping citizenship. Here's the crazy part: many people don't even realize they left something out or made a mistake. But the government doesn't treat mistakes lightly when it comes to citizenship. Even a small misstatement can be interpreted as fraud if the government believes it was intentional or material to your eligibility. Now let's talk about the second way Americans are at risk of losing their citizenship, and this one will blow your mind. It involves children born on US soil. That's right, even birthright citizenship is under legal attack. In January 2025, President Trump signed Executive Order 14,160. It's called Protecting the Meaning and Value of American Citizenship. This order attempts to limit automatic citizenship for children born in the US to non-citizen parents, specifically those who are undocumented or here on temporary visas. That's a direct challenge to the 14th Amendment, which has long guaranteed birthright citizenship to anyone born in the United States. This is not theoretical. The order has been signed. It's already led to lawsuits in multiple states. Some courts have blocked its enforcement, at least for now, but the battle is far from over. The fact that this executive order exists and that it's being defended in court shows that birthright citizenship is no longer seen as untouchable. The implications are huge. If the courts eventually uphold any part of this order, people born in the US could lose their citizenship years later if their parent status is challenged or disqualified retroactively. Imagine growing up as an American, going to school, working, paying taxes, and then being told one day that you were never supposed to be a citizen in the first place. That's the kind of legal chaos we're now facing. The third surprising way Americans are losing their citizenship is through forced or coerced renunciation, especially in international situations. Normally, renouncing US citizenship is a voluntary act. You go to a US embassy, fill out paperwork, swear an oath, pay the fee, and give it up. That's your choice. But what happened when it's not your choice? In 2025, we saw the case of Saad al-Mahdi, a US Saudi dual national. He posted critical comments about the Saudi crown prince on social media while in the US. Later, when he traveled to Saudi Arabia, he was arrested. Eventually, Saudi officials pressured him to renounce his US citizenship while he was still detained. His family says it was done under duress. He was threatened with more prison time. The US government has not yet recognized that renunciation as valid, but it raises a chilling question: how many Americans overseas are being pushed into giving up their citizenship under threat or fear? It's more common than people think. Authoritarian regimes often use legal pressure, surveillance, and threats of violence or jail to coerce dual citizens into dropping their US ties. Sometimes they won't let someone leave the country until they've signed a renunciation document. And once that's done, reversing it can be incredibly difficult, especially if you no longer have access to US resources or legal counsel. The fourth way citizenship can be lost is a little more complicated, but just as real. It has to do with actions taken abroad, like joining a foreign military or taking public office in another country. US law allows for loss of citizenship if someone serves in a foreign military or government under certain conditions. But here's where it gets tricky: it only leads to loss of citizenship if the person intends to give it up. That word intent is everything. You can be a dual citizen and serve in a foreign government without losing your US citizenship, as long as you don't show that you're abandoning your loyalty to the United States. But if the government can prove intent through speeches, official oaths, or even actions, they can argue that you gave up your citizenship voluntarily. In 2025, immigration lawyers are seeing an increase in these types of cases. More Americans who've taken roles in foreign countries are being investigated to determine whether they intended to give up their US citizenship. And remember, this isn't something you have to apply for or ask permission for. The US can determine that you've lost citizenship through your actions and make it official without you even realizing it's happened until it's too late. And finally, there's the fifth and perhaps most quiet but powerful way citizenship is being lost: through administrative action and policy reinterpretation. This includes formal renunciation, yes, but also situations where people unknowingly take steps that result in losing citizenship without ever going through a court. One common example is people who voluntarily acquire another nationality and, in doing so, swear an oath of allegiance to that country, especially if they do so with the clear intent to relinquish US citizenship. That doesn't happen often, but when it does, the US government may treat that as an official loss of citizenship, even if the person later changes their mind. But the more dangerous trend in 2025 is the use of internal policy shifts to strip citizenship quietly. The Department of Homeland Security, in coordination with the DOJ, is now using data analytics, immigration history, and even old paperwork to identify discrepancies that could lead to revocation. In other words, someone who thought they were fine may be flagged by an algorithm or case audit and suddenly find themselves under investigation. Also, with new executive orders, more aggressive enforcement, and expanding interpretation of what constitutes fraud or misrepresentation, the threshold for losing citizenship is lower than it's been in decades. All of this raises a very real question: how secure is US citizenship in 2025? Let's recap. You can lose your citizenship if you were naturalized and the government later finds out you lied or omitted something important in your application, even if it was years ago. You can lose it if you were born in the US but the government decides your parents weren't eligible to pass on citizenship under new rules. You can be forced into giving it up under pressure from foreign governments. You can accidentally lose it by serving another country's military or holding office, if your actions are interpreted as intent to give up US ties. And you can lose it administratively through a growing list of policies and legal shifts that most Americans don't even know exist. That's not how most of us think about citizenship. We think of it as stable, permanent, a guarantee. But in 2025, that guarantee is not as solid as it used to be. For naturalized citizens especially, the message is clear: any past error, any hidden record, any misstatement can come back and strip you of something you worked hard to earn. For dual citizens, international actions and changing legal definitions are making things more complicated. And for Americans born here, even birthright citizenship is under legal attack.